they feel that the energy is changing. They feel that we are headed into something brand new. And some are asking, am I doing this journey with the right person?
Relationships right now in specific are accelerating our evolution, are accelerating this ascension process that we're in.
I feel like this is the breakdown before the breakthrough.
We're ready to step beyond that.
Because when you start to believe that you are at the right place at the right time, you're meeting the right person, you're launching the right project. Like when you feel that within yourself, you feel that flow.
Even more than an identity crisis, we're stepping into a new human.
I've learned that really can only be in one frequency of either faith or in fear.
Dallisa Hocking, welcome on Just Tap In. What are you most excited about right now globally and in your life?
I am most excited about the possibilities that each of us have right now. I think there's so much that points to the negative or the really heavy headlines. And I am thrilled about what each of us is going to be able to do, because there's a great dismantling that's obviously happening right now. But I've been shown by Spirit that where we are going and what we're going to be able to do is probably hard for the masses to understand, but I think your audience absolutely will get this, that we are already walking into, but will further get into what Spirit has referred to as the activation phase, and how we will become more than we've ever felt before. And as I'm saying this psychically, what I'm hearing is it will be less about the physical body, and it will be more about energy and consciousness and how we are all connected regardless of where we live. And not just because we have the technology to connect us, but because my energy and your energy can connect in a frequency, and we can come together and create incredible things. So I'm most excited about that because I can see where we're heading, and I'm not as stuck as maybe I once was in the fear and the heavy headlines. And instead, I see what we're birthing and creating. And I think that's why many of us decided to be alive right now and to be here to witness everything that we see today in the headlines, but also because we knew, our soul knew, that we were coming in to co-create the new reality, the new earth. And that gives me a lot of hope. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Beautiful. And in this great dismantling that you talk about, I wanted to tune in to a little bit more of the human things. And this is, I genuinely like to talk about the cosmic and the out there, right? The unknown. But I know now that in this year, a lot of spiritually aware or spiritually tapped in people, many of whom are listening today, are struggling with a lot of human things like money, relationships, stability, their purpose. And we're finding ourselves asking if there's something wrong with us. And so I wanted to tune in there in this great dismantling period that you're talking about. What are we actually responding to as a collective right now that is genuinely asking us to look more into the human realm rather than ignore it at this particular time?
Great question, Emilio. I feel like this is the breakdown before the breakthrough. And I come across a lot of people on my journey through my work, and they often talk about how the relationship they're in isn't working, or they don't like the job that they're in, or they're wondering where money is going to come from. And then they look at the news and go, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to do this if these different things in my life don't feel like they're aligned? I remember hearing years ago, somebody describe like the more that you're pulling back, on the slingshot, that feeling, that heaviness inside of you, and then you let go, and then the arrow goes even further. And I know that might be easy for me to say today. People are going through different challenges in their own life, but I offer hope by saying that about the slingshot and thinking about your own life, about if you have been going through challenges, then can we choose to see those challenges as getting you ready for the biggest liftoff that you've ever had, seeing it as preparation for where you're going to go next and how you're going to use those roadblocks that you've had. Because I am of the belief that every challenge that we've ever had or currently have is setting us up for something greater, that we can use it as fuel. And that brings us into the core energies, because somebody may be listening to this and saying, you have no idea. You're not in my shoes. You don't know what I've been through. And you're right, I don't. And I'm not going to pretend to be. But I think if we look at this energetically, then our experiences are helping us heal ourselves. I've taken radical accountability for my own emotions, which has been really, really helpful in my own journey. And so anyone listening to this that is having a roadblock, get real clear on what the roadblock is. And then can you sit and ask yourself some questions and get curious about what that challenge is showing you or teaching you. And I had a mentor years ago that taught me about 3 core energies. And it completely changed my life. And now when I lean in with curiosity to my own emotions and my own life circumstances, I go back to these 3 core energies. I'd love to share them, as I think they may be helpful. So if you're feeling something tight inside of yourself, or an emotion that feels heavy, or you feel really frustrated, get clear on what it is. Just state it as fact. And then ask yourself, is this that I am seeking approval because maybe I don't feel lovable or worthy? Am I seeking safety because I don't really feel safe right now? Do I want control here because I feel out of control? And going into those 3 core energies and applying those to our emotions, our life, what we're going through, we can get clear as to what's driving the energy underneath it all. Because maybe there's somebody listening today that feels like their money is really tight and they have their own business. And maybe they heard those 3 core energies and they hear the energy of approval, and something inside of them just lit up. And because of this conversation today, they're going to start thinking about how their lack of worth, or not feeling good enough, or feeling like an imposter, that they'll sit with that and they'll get curious and they'll go deeper within themselves and they'll realize, in my business, maybe I should be charging more. Maybe I haven't been honoring my gifts and my talents in the way that I should, So it's going to apply to everybody a little bit differently. And so how do you heal those energies, or the things that are going to come up to the surface when you start to ask this question? Is you give the energy to yourself. And so if it's that you realize like, wow, I have this roadblock and it's connected to approval, then how can you show yourself more love, more care? If you're realizing it's connected to safety, can you take yourself back to a memory where you felt really safe? And then if it's control, taking yourself into a memory where you really felt like you were in flow and that life was working for you. So whatever it is you feel is depleted or a frustration or agitating you, give it to yourself in order to balance it out. Does that make sense? Is it helpful?
Very helpful. And I also wanted to go a little bit deeper there with the core energies and ask you what you feel is on the other side of approval, what is on the other side of control, and what is on the other side of safety.
Yeah, if you're on the other side of approval, you really have a great relationship with yourself. That's how you could recognize that you're on the other side of being triggered regularly by needing approval or external validation, right? So you feel like your own advocate. You feel that boundaries are a good thing. Telling someone no and having that be the complete sentence is healthy. You put yourself first, or at least make yourself a huge priority in your own life. I know putting yourself first may be equal to other people you have in your life, like a significant other or a child, but making yourself a priority in your own life, that's what it looks like and feels like. On the other side of safety, it's going within and recognizing, do I feel good in my own body? Do I feel good in my space? Do I feel that the things in my life or the things of the past that have created a lack of safety, do I feel like I've leaned into that? Do I feel like I've given myself grace? What has been my journey with forgiveness if it's something that happened with someone else? And so feeling that and noticing the energetic subtleties in your body and in your space. And the other one being control. Noticing how it shows up in your day-to-day and noticing it doesn't trigger you anymore. So for example, if somebody is stuck in traffic in their car and they're so mad and somebody just cuts them off and, maybe they honk or start screaming at the person, that's usually control, because you feel out of control because you can't move your car, or you were going to be ahead in traffic and now this car has cut you off. And so you feel that energy of feeling out of control. So it usually shows up in the day-to-day of, do I want to tell that person what to do? Do I think that that person should make a different decision and I should tell them what they should do? So I've noticed control creeps in a lot. And so what somebody should be looking for is noticing when they have the emotion, so then they can connect it to one, two, or all three of those core energies, and then do that inner work. I've noticed that once you call it out, like if you're the person that's having road rage, you're like, wow, it's control. You're like, wow, yeah, I feel this. I feel a tightness in myself when I have this sense of being out of control, but I don't want to feel this way. I actually would prefer to be much happier stuck in traffic. And just noticing it will help dissolve the hold that it has on you, because the next time you're stuck in traffic, I would bet that you won't be as mad or you won't act out as much as you have been. And you might also want to ask yourself if control is a big one for you. Usually control and approval are the two big ones. But if you are feeling a lot of the control coming up, asking yourself, where in my life do I feel out of control? Because it might be coming out when you're in the car, but it's likely pointing to another part of your life that is out of control in your opinion. And so you're looking to make up for that someplace else.
Hello, beautiful family. Quick one today. I just wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you that have subscribed to this channel. Your subscription means more than you know. Even though it's free, what you're doing is you're empowering a whole channel to be able to do this every single day and continue showing up in the way that we can with all of our resources on hand. Thank you for contributing to the growth of this channel, for sharing it with the people that you love, for creating a conscious movement of individuals that are seeking the sovereignty and the divinity of their soul. This is why we're here. And if you haven't already and you're enjoying this content, I invite you now to look below on that little button that says subscribe and welcome you properly to this community. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are and being pure love and radiating that with everyone that you see. Back to the episode. And I'm naturally noticing that these core energies involve naturally other people. And I know that before you fully stepped into the work of a psychic medium, spiritual teacher, you were a dating coach and a matchmaker. And so naturally you were seeing these dynamics and relationships play out. Now with this perspective of the soul and these higher consciousness teachings that have come through, in what ways do you feel that relationships right now in specific are accelerating our evolution, are accelerating this ascension process that we're in, and allowing more dissolving in our life to happen? Because relationships, again, it's a very human thing, but also the soul chose which are the people that it's going to draw into its reality. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as a dating coach, matchmaker, and a psychic medium.
Yeah, watching the comments, there's going to be a bunch of people saying, can you set me up? Because relationships...
All singles comment now and we will email you.
We'll email you a link to get started. Oh my gosh, relationships. Of course, they're a mirror for us, right? And this is where we get incredible growth opportunities. I think there's something interesting that's happening right now and will continue to happen as our own frequency shifts. And it comes in a couple of different forms. One, I think that people that are in relationships, of course, this is an overgeneralization. It doesn't apply to everyone's relationship, but there's going to be big questions that people are asking of the person they're in the relationship with to see, are we really on the same page in the ways in which they matter? You know, do we believe in the same values? Do we believe in a cohesive, aligned future that we're both going towards? And I think what we'll find is there's a lot of people, I'm sure there's some listening to this, that are nodding their head because they've recognized that there is something about the relationship that doesn't feel quite aligned. And I think part of what I've channeled on this is there were people that got married, quite some time ago, maybe even in the last 8 to 10 years and further out than that they felt like it was what they needed to do or wanted to do based on what was happening in and around them and the world, what they were witnessing, what was deemed as the thing that you should do. Get married, start a family. It was so much a part of the conversation. And now that we're a little bit further out from that, and that's not how a lot of people and countries are thinking these days, I've seen in individuals that they are asking the question, is it okay for me not to be in a marriage? Is it okay if I don't want to experience life in the same way with this one person? Can I go and live my life as a single person? And what does that look like? My whole identity has been connected to this other person. So I think there's a lot of these deep questions that people are asking about who they are in partnership with and why. Because I think on a soul level, they feel that the energy is changing. They feel that we are headed into something brand new. And some are asking, am I doing this journey with the right person? You know, and I've also witnessed that one person will be in one part of their spiritual journey and the other person has no interest in it whatsoever. And it feels like it's driving a bigger divide, because those that are energetically sensitive and doing the spiritual work and doing the heart-centered work, they're on a different frequency than the person potentially that they're married to or in a long partnership with. So I think we're going to be seeing that. And then I also think that we're going to be witnessing, if it's not for ourselves, but even if it's somebody that's in our inner circle, people going through more identity crisis and wondering who they are as an individual, and hopefully getting really curious about why they came here to Earth and what they want to do with the very limited amount of time they have here in this lifetime. And when someone's going through an identity crisis, that's going to shake, rattle, and roll like everything around them, because they're going to start to question maybe all of the choices that they've made. I would like to offer that all of the choices that we make are to help us grow and evolve. And I don't think we can really make a mistake. I think the universe always reroutes us and brings us back to where we're supposed to be. But I do think we're going to witness that in a lot of people, and that will come out in different ways. There's somebody that could be pretty silent about their identity crisis, and maybe they're just thinking about it at home and they're trying to sort through it. There's going to be other people, though, that are on the other end of that scale, that they don't know about the core energies and they don't know about frequency, and, you know, no judgment to them, but their first initial output may be to get really angry or show their rage in different ways. And I think as we're going through this shift of consciousness, and many of us are feeling that frequency get higher and being able to access a lot of this, there's still a lot of people that don't know anything about you, Emilio, your show, the people you've talked to, the things that are being discussed in the spiritual world. And their first knee-jerk reaction may be to go into rage, which will then, you know, be the headlines that we're seeing. We're going to notice more of the noise if we're focusing on things like news headlines. I know a lot of people have either completely opted out of looking at the news, or they limit the amount that they are, you know, plugging into. But there will be, whether or not you're paying attention to the news or not, it is still happening. And so there will be instances of, unfortunately, things that are of greater violence and war and things like that, because it's that lower frequency that hasn't looked at or wanted to go into a higher octave. But I do think that with each thing that happens, either for the individual or for a community or for a country, I think it's going to give each person an opportunity to raise their frequency, to heal themselves. And what is going to wake one person up isn't necessarily what's going to wake the next person up. And so Spirit showed that it's like a layering of different things that we're going to go through. You know, of course, a lot of it kicked off in 2025, but now we're really in the midst of it and stepping deeper into this great dismantling. And it will take some time for us to move through this. But with each thing that happens, more and more people are like tapped on the shoulder and given more of that opportunity to step into the higher frequency, whether they are aware of it or not. I think it's a soul level. I think it's intuitively, it comes through them. But identity crisis will show up in a variety of different ways, and it just depends on the individual and how much healing they've done.
It's like our friend Lee Harris and the Z's that he channels are coming through. It's, even more than an identity crisis, we're stepping into a new human. And one thing I wanted to highlight there that you said was that there are no mistakes from a soul's perspective, and that the universe always finds ways to route us back. And if we look at it from a macro perspective, I'm really curious to ask you how you've seen signs of how the greater organizing intelligence of this universe is rerouting humanity back into its original timeline or original template that it was meant to evolve into.
I think it's doing it through all of us. I think source, the universe, God, however you want to refer to the higher power, I think the rerouting is through each of us, because we are the ones that are living the day-to-day lives. We're the ones that are either doing or not doing things in our local communities. And we are being asked to stay in the present moment as much as possible, because it can be really seductive to want to go into the future and want to know everything that's going to happen. But Spirit's made it clear that the rerouting, the miracles, the intuitive downloads are all here in the present moment. And when we stay here as much as possible in the present, that's when we get nudges. That's when we run into the right person at the coffee shop. That's when we have a prophetic dream that leads us into the next project that we're going to birth. And so I think it's less about humans trying to figure out how to get the reroute if they feel like they've stepped off course a little bit. Instead, I think it's actually about allowing the unfolding of miraculous things, of possibility, of opportunity in the present moment, and believing that you get to have access to that you get to have the things happen for you in your life that you think maybe only happen to other people. Because when you start to believe that you are at the right place at the right time, you're meeting the right person, you're launching the right project. Like when you feel that within yourself, you feel that flow within you. And that allows you, I think, to have more confidence and belief in yourself. Because I've learned that really can only be in one frequency of either faith or in fear at any given time. And so if you are in the frequency of faith and you are in the present moment, you can lean in to the belief and the knowingness that the universe is always rerouting you to your highest pathway possible. But if the story is, I'm a victim of my own life, of my own circumstances, nothing good happens for me, the universe is screwing me over left, right, and sideways, you get to be right. You get to be right. And so if it's a fear or a victim story, you are going to keep manifesting things that happen like that. And you're going to say, I heard Delisa and Emilio talking that one time. They're full of crap because everything bad keeps happening to me. It's because that's the frequency that you're in. And some people aren't going to want to hear that. But if you lean into the frequency of faith, and you know what? Things are happening for me. And maybe you wake up in the morning and you say, what if today is the best day of my life? And that is the optimism that you carry forward into each and every day that you have. I would love to hear the stories that come out of your life after you really start leaning in to faith and that all is well and that you are being divinely rerouted. And sometimes that means it's for something great that's coming into your pathway and they're rerouting you for that. But it also may mean in the simple moments of life that you're being rerouted to avoid some kind of danger. You know, I've heard people talk about how they're late leaving the house for work. And because of that, they missed a car accident that they very well could have been in. As just one small example, I'm sure we can all think of things that have happened in our life where we look back in hindsight and go, thank God I was late for that. Or I'm so glad I didn't marry that person, you know, but we can't always see it in the moment. And so we have to believe that in each moment we are being looked after and we are being guided because we are so incredibly loved.
Agree. And one thing I'm very excited for right now, especially in this space, the spiritual space, is that a lot of us are starting to move away from these like fear-based predictions and that this is going to happen. And that's something I've been tuning into collectively, that we're ready to step beyond that. And I'm seeing you voice it and lead into it in a very big way. And one thing that I was really keen on exploring with you is, rather than a segment on like predicting a future, really delving into new ways of living that are impending for humanity, that will allow us to reach back into those organic states of who we really are, rather than go into these artificial dystopias and put chips in our bodies and do all these other things that, there's an agenda for that as well. But I feel like the more we voice this other potential, then we tune into it. I know you've spoken about micro communities, new ways of currency, housing markets, how that is changing. So I'm not really sure where to start off with that. Maybe there's something intuitive where, you feel called to speak into in that realm. But I'd love to explore these new ways of living as the new human, as our friend Lee would say. If anything is coming up for you there, or what you've received also from Spirit.
I was shocked when I got the download that predictions weren't the lane to be in, at least for me, right? I can only speak for myself, but I do get downloads from Spirit regularly. But this one caught me off guard, where I've been making predictions for over a decade. And my gifts all dropped in 2015, overnight, literally. And so for this last decade, I've loved looking at different countries and political leaders and currency and everything you can think of. I've enjoyed looking at the systems and making the predictions. And Spirit was like, no, this phase is over. And I felt kind of like they took me by the shoulders and shook me a little bit. They, my spirit team of angels, guides, ancestors. And they said, you're in the activation phase now. And over a period of about 48 hours, I felt this deep, deep knowingness that the consumption of predictions isn't going to help us like maybe it once did, where we could tune into the predictions and we felt better. Maybe we felt more safe going back to the core energies. So then we would, watch that video and then find another video so that we would have that dopamine hit and that consumption. But Spirit's like, you're going inward now. You're going to now take everything that all of these different people have talked about, spiritual and otherwise, that are for your highest good, to help you heal. And you're going to actually heal yourself. And talking to me about this was more like my message is now changing, because I love talking about all of this. So instead of me going on like today and just listing off all of these predictions that are going to be happening, it's more about, what is that new human that you asked about? What does that look like? What are we going to be headed into? Because we've heard the saying before, like what you focus on expands. And so if more and more of us are focusing on what the new activation phase of inner healing and what that leads to for society. And, we're going to be a different human. I mean, yeah, Lee's right.
We change the timeline, right? We hop into another timeline.
Yes. And I've seen, frankly, a much simpler new human, using Lee's term, where it feels like we get back to basics. And not in a bad way, but it feels like we become more connected to the land. We become more connected to the food that we're growing. We slow things down. We really take our time in relationship. We take our time with working with each other and blessing each other. And it doesn't mean that things won't happen or progress, but just think of it as like we're peeling back all the systems and layers that so many of us have experienced in our lives. And we're going to be stepping into another timeline, another frequency that feels so much more connected to each other than we've ever experienced before. And I think, quite frankly, some of our ancestors would probably be pretty jealous, even though they don't have jealousy on the other side. But I think they'll look at us through this time and be like, wow, I wish I could be in the human body right now experiencing this. And maybe that will lead to, more babies and reincarnation, which goes down a whole other rabbit hole. But I do think where we are headed, if we go through this dark tunnel that we're in right now, there is a light at the other end of it that we can focus on. And we can bring more of our energy into that focal point so that we can bring it in maybe even faster, because I do think we have the capability of doing that. And imagining what it might look like to build your own home. If whether it's a tiny house or an earth ship, what would that be like to put your own effort and energy into building a space that you can live in and having a big garden plot that you and others around you are using to cultivate your own food, and knowing who in the community has what gifts? Whether that's somebody who has some kind of spiritual gift, but who's a really great painter, or who knows how to do plumbing, or who's really great at planting seeds that will end up in a huge harvest. So it feels like there's going to be this attention more towards the local community and what we are doing with each other, and who naturally wants to do different things, almost like having a directory. I'd say having a Rolodex, but I don't I don't know how many people know what a Rolodex is these days. But knowing who is great at what and being able to call upon them and them upon you, it feels like there's going to be more of an opportunity in that frequency of bartering for goods and services, where it just feels like, I want to help you, you want to help me, let's come together and do this. And I know this sounds like, kumbaya and like, let's all hold hands. And I think there is an element of that too, where we're headed. I actually feel that we will all personally feel happier and more fulfilled because we're getting back to basics, because there's not going to be an infinite amount of, what am I going to do on a Friday night? Let's figure this out. It's more like we're going to be in the present moment, just like I was talking about a little bit ago. But I still think that there are going to be people that are not going to go in to that higher frequency. Based on what I've seen in channelings, it doesn't look like everyone says, yeah, I want to go live there with that lifestyle or that energy agreement. I don't want that. And so I have been shown that there is this other pathway that is of a different frequency, that has what you were mentioning about, digital chips and AI systems and robots. And so that is also very much in the energy field. And so when I look at it just as my human, being human, it feels like we could be coexisting on the same earth, but at different frequencies and different experiences. Because it still feels like there's duality. And maybe that's part of Earth School. It's a very advanced classroom. It could be that there's always duality that's here on Earth, unless Mother Earth herself decides to ascend and take everybody with her. And, that would obviously change the frequency of everyone. But I still feel like there's free will here in Earth. So it doesn't feel like everyone goes one way or the other.
What do you feel leads someone into that choice of if there are these multitude of pathways opening up in the same Earth School, what ultimately leads a person to make that decision of which pathway they would like to choose for themselves?
I think some of it had to do with before you were born. I think what your soul wanted to learn and experience while they were here. And for some people, that's going to be wanting to reconnect with AI, because I feel like we've had it before. So some people want to go into maybe the transhumanist, human movement. So they could be choosing that pathway. Maybe they want to learn about how to merge more with artificial intelligence. Perhaps they want to be, being along the pathway of medicine and cures and using AI to develop a lot of that. So I think it comes down to what experience the person wants to have. Because when I see the two, they're very different. But I don't feel any judgment at all with either choice. But I think you'll feel naturally pulled, to one versus the other. I hear it all the time from students where they feel like, oh, well, I want to go towards this one. And then you hear other people say, gosh, well, I'm really interested in having a chip in my brain and learning what that's going to be like. So I think we just let each person choose what they're going to choose. I think the bigger headlines will live in the world of the AI and what we're doing with chips and how we're merging. Whereas I feel like the other timeline, it almost feels like we step back hundreds of years and that's how we live. So when you hear that, it's kind of like, which option feels most uplifting? Which one feels most exciting? And that's naturally where you may just gravitate towards. But in another incarnation, you may come back and choose the other way of living. And I know all of it's stacked and time is, in my opinion, an illusion. But I do think we have different incarnations for different experiences to ultimately help our soul evolve.
Definitely. And even if we were to explore the idea that these two pathways or more than two can coexist, do you feel that any way they can intersect, or will it be very much like this pathway over here, this one on the other side, and they don't really converge at any point?
Spirit has shown that there can be overlap, so it's not impossible to have intersection, but that it will feel like, okay, we're over here experiencing this, you're over here experiencing that. It just feels like there's less and less intersection between the two groups, but they haven't said that it will be impossible to do it. It just naturally feels like two separate experiences that are almost living independently from each other. But it'll be wild to see this all unfold, and kind of it reminds me, some people may remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books. And it's a book that you would read a chapter, and then it would say at the end of the chapter, okay, you have two choices. If you choose this, turn to page 37. If you choose this, it's page 58. And so you would go through the Choose Your Own Adventure. That's what this feels like, is that we all got handed a book, and we're starting to flip through it, and we're starting to kind of feel this out, but that we will ultimately choose our own adventure. And I do hope that people see that eventually it will have that tone of excitement and adventure, even if it's not the current page that we're on right now.
Is this already happening to a degree where you get very, very different experiences in terms of frequency on the earth? And you know, I'm just looking at my personal life. There are some places I've been to energetically. I'm talking Egypt, Peru, or I'm going into these beautiful retreats with thousands of people, and I'm like, I feel like I'm on a different like frequency band. And then I get back home, and then I'm here in as I was telling you, Colombia, which is a chaotic city, and I feel like it's a different frequency band. Yeah, it feels like multiple dimensions and realities that we can experience at any given moment. I just wanted to explore that for a moment too.
Yes, and you can move, I think, from one spot to another spot, you know, through frequency. People are already doing it through astral travel or through their dream state. You can visit wherever you want, and there's different frequencies that have different experiences. But yes, every place has a different frequency. And I've experienced this traveling. You know the frequency usually of the place that you live in, your town, and you go and you travel someplace else and it feels different. And the energy sensitives out there will probably recognize that. Every city feels different. Every place feels different. So we have that even just normally day to day as we move through the world. It each has its own energy signature. And maybe that connects into astrology and, the birth date and time of that city. And that creates the astrology chart, the natal chart for that city. And maybe that has to do with the energy signature that it has. But I think we can move through frequency wherever we want to go. And that means even into higher frequencies, like visiting the other side or visiting other dimensions or galactic beings. And I think it's a choice because it has to do with your own personal frequency. I believe anyone can, for example, tap into their psychic abilities. Or if they want to be a medium, they could become a medium. But it comes down to what frequency they hold. And so places like the other side, that dimension, or other dimensions and frequencies, we attune our own natural vibration, our energy to that of the place we want to go to. It's almost like turning the dial on a radio, and we set it to that station, and then we can go there. But a lot of the places that many people want to go to of these higher frequencies require that your frequency is higher. And there's many things you can do to raise your frequency. Many of the things you could put under the umbrella of live a healthier life, right? So whether it's sleep or hydration or organic fruits and vegetables, walking out in nature, all of those things will help to raise your frequency. And you'll naturally find that you start tapping into these higher frequency places or dimensions more easily because you're more of a frequency match.
What surprised you the most about when you first started traveling to the other side?
That it's a lot like here. I know that might scare people. It's actually a better version of Earth because Earth just has so much volatility and duality. And the other side, I am now more convinced than ever that we co-create our experience on the other side. So we've talked a lot about how we co-create here and, our thoughts and healing ourselves. But I actually think that when we pass away, go back to where we came from. I think it's home. I think we go home.
Where is home?
It's another dimension. I think it's another space that holds a special frequency. And so we are brought back there when we leave the physical body. But all of these years looking and communicating with people that have passed away or animals, there's a wide variety of things that they're doing over there. And some have even told me like, oh yeah, I have a job over here. They're not getting a paycheck. It's not like a job here. But I remember one lady said that I was communicating with, she goes, yeah, I'm like a college orientation guide on the other side. When you get back over here, I help you get reacclimated. I help give you a tour and show you kind of what's changed or what's been developed. So we don't just go over there and sit in a chair or stand somewhere and look around.
Waiting for coach to call your jersey. Get back in there. Get back in there. Yes, coach.
Exactly. We are over there creating our reality that we want to have in that dimension. And that can be anything that you want to create. And if it's something that you want to have as a project or a job, like you can. And that in that way, I feel like it really mirrors Earth because we can create our own energy signature here and heal ourselves and be quite happy here on Earth. But on the other side, the other dimension, it's like stepping into a room next door because spirit's never far away. And anytime they come in, they really feel like they're stepping in from the room next door. But that dimension feels like it has much more, I would say, unconditional love that runs through it. Whereas here, I think we'd all love to think that we love unconditionally, and some of us are capable of doing that. But I think there's a lot of those roadblocks and challenges we spoke of earlier that make it hard to always lead with unconditional love here. Whereas when you get over and go back to your home, that feels like it's just a part of the fabric there, that there isn't jealousy or competitiveness. It's like we all are in this together. And in some ways, as I'm saying this out loud, it feels similar to what I was describing with that other frequency timeline here on Earth of going back to simpler times and being there for each other. It has a lot of the same kind of feel to it when I talk about the other side. But yeah, I even kind of feel weird calling it the other side anymore because like they're right there. Our home is right there. It feels like it basically overlaps where we're at, meaning that it doesn't feel like it's some far off place in the clouds. It feels like it is a few feet away from us. And interestingly, when I do mediumship and a spirit steps in, they're usually standing in front of me, just a few feet off the ground. So it makes me wonder, and I'm sure I'll be exploring this more as the years unfold, but that they are stepping forward in their own dimension of home, and I'm just seeing it in front of me, but their dimension somehow overlaps ours.
I got sick at the beginning of this year, and I just gave myself some time to catch up on a few series and movies that I wanted to watch because I normally don't even have the time to do that. And I was watching Stranger Things, which, for people that, it's a little dark. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, but it explains how dimensions overlap really well. Like how when one thing happens in one dimension, it actually influences in a way the other. And I'm also curious to know, when someone does pass on, what is their level of retention of the memories that they had in just their previous life? And that identity crisis that, might even occur on the other plane, on the other dimension.
Oh my goodness. I've never been asked that question before. I think, based on what I've gathered, that we do have access to the memories of each of our lifetimes. And, I go into the Akashic records and look at lifetimes and plans. And so based on that experience that I've done with the Akashic records, I feel like we could go into any lifetime and look at what we did, what we didn't do, and create a plan for what we want to do next. Whether that's here or there or somewhere else, right? But I feel like the identity crisis here will in some ways impact and create that ripple in this other dimension, where we could call the other side for simplicity, that there could be concern, from our loved ones that are over there if we are going through something challenging here on earth, because they do ultimately want us to be happy and they want us to be living our best lives. They don't like when we are going through, dark nights of the soul. So I think that those of us that are going through some kind of experience like that, or an identity crisis, I would call upon the beings that are helping you. So whether that's spirit guides or angels, I do a lot of work with archangels, a loved one that's on the other side, that we can align with those energies and ask them for help as we are going through something here. And I feel just compelled to say this out loud because it may play into this a little bit and give an example. When teaching psychic development, one of the things that I remind students of is that it's two-way communication. That we can ask them for something and they can bring information back to us. So one of the examples I use in class is, if spirit shows you a symbol, let's say you're practicing clairvoyance and being able to see information. If they show you a symbol and you don't understand it or what they're trying to tell you, because it's like playing a game of Pictionary, you can say to spirit, hey, show that to me a different way. I don't understand what this is. And they will switch out the image to something else. And then, you can go on and on with that conversation with them. So I think a lot of people have felt like, oh, it's just a one-way street. But it's not. You can ask them for something, they can send something back. So just remember that as you're sitting in your home or you're listening to this today. It's like, what is it that I want to ask of my spirit team or people that are on the other side that I love? And is there something about my life that I would like their help and assistance with? And remembering that it is a conversation. And sometimes the conversation is while you're awake, and a nudge or an image or a feeling will come in. And maybe sometimes it's when you're asleep and it's because you're relaxed and you have your guard down and your loved one or a guide or an angel comes through and gives you a message or helps you. But they want us to have I guess in some way, a living, breathing relationship with them, even though they're not in the same place that we are at physically.
Mm. You mentioned that other place is imbued with more unconditional love. And I'm wondering what would happen. This is just an exploration, right? A hypothesis. What would happen if in this realm we start imbuing more unconditional love and less separation, less chaos, less disharmony? Would our dimensions start kind of blending together? Because that would be the frequency shift that we would need to make to maybe meet them there or have them meet us as well? Because when they come through, I'm imagining that they're changing their frequency to be able to have you see them, or you're changing your frequency to have you see them as well. So I'm just thinking in terms of energy, frequency, consciousness, macro collective shifts, how you tune into that as well.
This question is like blowing my socks off because yes, I mean, we think about it. We go to the place that our frequency is attuned to, right? We were talking about that earlier about if you get your frequency high enough, then you can communicate with the other side, or you can communicate with galactic beings if that's what you want to do. So I believe wholeheartedly it is a frequency match. And so if we collectively hear...
The matchmaker, there it is.
I can't get rid of it, you know? It's my calling. No, I'm kidding. But if we do that collectively here, then we would be the match for the other side. And so to me, that would say that would blend it together. That would create heaven on earth, basically, if you want to go that route, where we then become part of that other dimension. And I feel this going through me right now, so I just want to say it out loud. There might be some people hearing that and going, oh gosh, like I don't want to be absorbed or like put into this other dimension. I want to be here on earth. And it goes back to having that choice of which pathway you want to take. But I do think there will be people that will remain here. And then as I'm saying this, it feels like there's going to be people that are going to be going into the other dimension. It almost feels like this feels like biblical. And I can give you a whole other story on that, but it feels, that's what I'm getting, this essence of like people leaving the earth and like going into this other dimension. But that feels to me to have like a biblical signature to it. And I'm sure there's people that will be able to tell us in the comments more about what that is. And because it just feels like this lifting off of earth and going into this new dimension. But if it's okay to do so, I feel like there's this piece that's meant to come in right now. There's been things I've been shown recently about religion and about spirituality. And it's really left me sitting and thinking about all of it. And I grew up Catholic, and it felt like I had to go to someone in order for them to talk to God for me, right? And then over the years, I've been really interested in religion and what people believe, because I think a lot of people probably in the essence, at the core, believe a lot of the same things. It's just different religions and different ways of expressing it. But I had a recent experience that caught me off guard. I started going to a new church just because I wanted community, and I was like, oh, it's non-denominational, and you know, they believe in prophecy. Like this is going to be great. So I go, I think I'd gone about a month, and then wouldn't you know it, they had a prophecy conference. And I thought, wow, I have actually found a church that will welcome a psychic medium. This is amazing. So they start, you know, introducing the prophets that are there and how it's going to work and all that. Hundreds of people there. And then they said, oh, remember to bring in your tarot, your astrology books. Remember to bring all of those divination books to the burn that we're doing. We're going to burn them all. And I sat there like, is this really happening? Like people burn divination?
Not the Oracle deck.
I know. So it really shocked me. I'm like, wait a second. So I'm having this, if anyone out there knows astrology, I am literally direct hit of my Uranus opposition. So I'm going through all of these things about like, who am I and what do I believe? But there's something so striking to me as someone who has a lot in Sagittarius about what do we believe? What is control? And where do I fit in and where do I belong? And so I feel like I needed to say all that because it feels collectively like there's going to be many, many people questioning their beliefs, where they belong, and wondering if there is like a building or a place that will accept them totally and completely. And maybe they'll find that and maybe they won't. But I think it's getting us back to the core of ourself and our own connection with divinity, with God, with the universe, and remembering that we are perfect just the way that we are, and to trust your instincts, your intuition, that if someone tells you to do something, or even someone you perceive to be in a more powerful position than you, is telling you to do something and it doesn't quite feel right, because I think we're going to experience a lot of this year and next year, trust it. Trust that you are getting divine wisdom inside of yourself. And if something doesn't feel right, trust it.
And it's very interesting because I also like to explore, the future of certain systems, like, me growing up in the traditional education system, pondering upon what could be possible there, especially now with some tools that we have now with technology and other things that, the children of these future generations are highly tuned in. Like they're wired in a very interesting way. I was speaking to my friend yesterday, JJ. She has 8 kids, and she had 3 of them after 2012. And she says that, both segments of kids are very different because of the energies that they came in with after that year, which was very big. Sort of as a last thing in this conversation, what I wanted to explore is some new models that you've seen forming, because I know you've mentioned how there's a huge dismantling of these systems, which is really kicking off strongly this year. Have you tuned into the energy and the frequency of the new models that are forming, or is that something that we're still sort of in a void around, like a transition period?
The energy collectively, when I look at it, looks like a ball of tangled up Christmas lights or like this electric current that just feels like it's pulsating and moving. And it can be somewhat challenging to ground that in and see what it is that is going to ultimately be birthed. And I think a lot of it is going to move and shift with us and what we're deciding and what we think is the next best way to build the model. But for example, with housing, I was shown a vision where commercial real estate, like red flag around commercial offices in different cities around the world. And they showed me that there would be investors going in and turning commercial real estate into homes, apartments that people would be living in, that would become more of a practice because there's less and less people interested in working in a physical office. And I think there's ultimately going to be more people that are self-employed that are going to say, well, I'm going to work from home. Why would I go run an office? So there's going to be a transition with that system where buildings we never thought people would live in are going to be transformed into places that people actually would like to live in. So that's going to be one of those shifts. Education, it feels as if it will become more micro. What I mean by that is more and more communities that will hire their own teacher. We've seen this in different places where they'll bring in the teacher, and then these different children in the neighborhood or in the friend circle, they all go to that one like micro school. So that is going to become more and more popular as we get through this year. But I also, on the flip side of that, with like higher education, it feels like that becomes a less popular choice. And I think we're already starting to see that, and some of the sentiment that people are sharing. It feels like it's one of the dinosaurs. It feels like it's one of the systems that isn't quite aligned with where the future is going, and where tech and robots and AI, where that is going. And based on that, Spirit has suggested that people look more into trade schools or more into a specialized education that will line up with what it is that they want to do specifically. And so I think we're going to see more of even higher education becoming more micro. I think
personalized, even
personalized.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even that's something that I would have liked to see, right? Because you standardize a test for people that are coming from very different backgrounds, ways of thinking, and then box them into something that is already standardized that you can't really get out of that box. Yeah. I
can't even tell you anything I actually applied from college to my professional life. And that was some time ago. And so now, right? Like it's going to keep going in that direction where it just isn't going to make sense for what people need based on where the world is now and where the advancements are coming in. I also, with healthcare, been shown that we will have more access to diagnostics that we do at home, where it feels like we will be able to plug into a machine that will tell us what's going on. I know we already have little examples of this with different things that monitor, blood pressure, for example, or blood sugar. This feels much more comprehensive, where from our home, we'll be able to figure out if there is a shift in some of the labs that we have to go to a lab and order, blood work to get done, that the advancements will come so far that we'll be able to see much, much earlier warning signs of different diseases or ailments. And that AI will be able to tell us like the sequence of the cure. So if we were to put in, it feels like it has to do with blood and DNA, but it's basically we feed it into AI and we say, okay, this is the disease we are trying to create a cure for. How do we do it? What's the answer? And it like computes how to do it. So disease.
It comes out, just says meditation.
Well, interesting you say that, because so we're going to end up curing, I feel, based on these channelings, that we're going to cure a lot of what we face in society today. However, to your point, Spirit said you can heal the physical body, but there's going to be an underlying core energy that needs to be healed emotionally, that also needs to be dealt with, taken care of, because the healing the body, you might heal that one thing that you had, but is the body going to end up creating new diseases to solve for because the emotional body hasn't been healed? It kind of goes along, I think, the premise of emotions activate different things in the physical body. You know, Louise Hay talked about it a lot. You Can Heal Your Life is a great book. But that's been coming through as like, yeah, sure, we'll be able to cure a lot of this stuff, but you're not going to get a free pass on healing the emotional part. You can't just drop that off. Like, this is going to be a part of it as well. So, and the emotional stuff you will have to do. You know, you'll be able to eventually, I think, click a button and you know, get healed. And I think sound and light therapies are going to be used as well in the healing process. But you are the one that's going to have to heal the emotional piece.
Yeah. Takes back our sovereignty in many ways. Yeah, Delisa, I feel like we could go on forever. I would love to start tying a beautiful knot in this conversation as we enter every single show. We have a segment called The Final Trio, just some personalized questions we ask at the end. Before that, though, I'd love to give you the space to let us know where people can find you, anything that you have currently going on. I'm sure we're going to continue a lot of these conversations and explore together. But where would you send people to look further into your universe and what you're here to create in the world?
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity, Emilio. My website is spiritandspark.com, all spelled out. And that's where you can find everything I've got going on. Two of the things I'm probably most proud of in this moment that I would love people to check out is I created 2 micro podcasts, and it's really to help people do that inner work. One is called The Curious Question, and it's one question once a week, and it's something to consider for your own life and how it's showing up for you. And the other one is called Books That Shift Us, and it's where I take a self-help or a spiritual book and I give you some insight and how we can apply it to our own lives. And so those are my new babies, and I'm really excited to keep sharing those and help people go within and get the answers they're looking for.
And you must be psychic because you read my mind. The first question I had for the final trio is, what is the greatest curiosity question that you would like to leave us with today?
Oh, gosh. I think the question would be, why am I angry? That's what comes up. Why am I angry? I think there's a lot of anger, and I think a lot of us feel angry about something. And I personally like to think of emotions of me sitting at a table and calling that emotion to the table and listening to what it has to say. And so when I'm angry, I look at that anger and I ask, like, what are you here for? What are you showing me? And I let that understanding of the anger help me to learn about myself more. And it helps me not feel so angry.
I love that. I love that practical tool that you left us with today and the visualization of the table. Because when we can sort of in a way observe the emotion without being in it directly, most of the times it just gets dissolved in the instant. What have been the books that have shifted you the most?
Wow, I really did read your mind. Okay. Oh my gosh. There's a book that I have marked probably every page in, and it's called The Power of Ted. It's by David Emerald. I've done an episode on that book, and it's one that not a lot of people talk about, but it completely changed the way that I see relationships. And it talks about the drama triangle and the roles of, you know, playing the rescuer, being a victim, being a villain or a persecutor. And after reading that book, I realized how many systems and relationships I had set up in my own life where I was the rescuer. And I wanted to just help and help and help, and how that really didn't help me at all. And the dynamics that it created between me and particularly people that were in a victim energy and just going back and forth and back and forth. It's like the person who comes to you for a psychic reading, for example, And then I would have them come back again the next month. And they'd ask me the same questions, but it's years later in hindsight that I recognize what that dynamic was. But The Power of Ted, and it's short and it's easy to read.
Beautiful. Add that one to the reading list. And it really ties into this last question I had for you in some sort of way. I'm feeling into it. And that is, right now, what do you feel people are being too hard on themselves about?
I feel they're too hard on themselves about, I keep hearing the word worthy in my ear, and I'm trying to bring it into human words, where they either don't feel like they're good enough to be here, or they don't feel like they belong anywhere. And I think a lot of people are going through this feeling of, am I enough? And that breaks my heart. I went through many years of dealing with self-worth issues, and I feel like the universe sends me a lot of people from all over that also have similar things that they are trying to work through. And my hope is that by sharing that people remember that we are more alike than we are different. And I don't want anyone to hold themselves back from life or from their dream because they don't think they deserve to have it. And I want people to embrace their own magic and bring their own unique talents out into the world. You are here right now for a reason. And I hope there's something that sparked in you today to remember that you are worthy of every dream that you have in your heart. And I hope you go and get it.
Dallisa Hocking, thank you for just opening up with us today and leading with your heart. I know you had been saying before that you're prioritizing more heart-to-heart connections, and I'm glad we could really make this space for that, and also encourage others to bring these types of conversations into their life, always drawing in the people that are there to hold space for that. And thank you for the work that you do, the leadership that you hold, and the templates that you're really here to share with us. I feel like this conversation really grounded us into the human experience, because there's so much noise going on, but bringing it a little bit more like relatable down to earth, even if we can go out a little bit far out into the other realms and dimensions for a moment. It always just comes back to what we're living here in the present moment. So I appreciate you for bringing us there, and I can't wait to continue these conversations.
Thank you, Emilio. I enjoyed every moment of it and can't wait to do it again.
Me too. Much love.